Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the After the Frame podcast, the podcast where we don't love you because we don't know you. My name is Malik, and I am joined, as always, by.
Hi, I'm Matt.
And if you couldn't already tell, we are reviewing Spider Man Brand New Day. So, what were your thoughts about this movie? Were you excited when they announced Tom Holland was going to have a fourth one? And did it live up to the expectations that you might have had for it?
I was very excited, and especially when they announced that Destin Daniel Cretton was directing this one, aside from the same director as the prior trilogy. I was excited for the different change of pace and that, we were going to continue to see Tom Holland in more roles, as his role in the MCU has continued to expand. And it sounded like, from initial announcement and all the marketing buildup, that it was going to be a lot more grounded of a story than compared to, Tom Holland's Peter Parker always being connected to essentially a buddy character in his other movies, from Iron Man with Doctor Strange and Nick Fury, like having some sort of tag up. This one didn't really do that. Like, it kind of let him do his own thing while staying cohesion in the universe. But very very excited with the announcement and what we got. Like, I was pleasantly surprised with comparison to my expectations. I was very I've always enjoyed the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies, and this was another good one.
Yeah, this movie is very good. In my opinion, it is the best of the four. I know that there's people that are very big on No Way Home, obviously. Theater experience wise, yeah, No Way Home. But this movie, to me, I think structurally and narratively is better. Um, I think that this movie, you mentioned something interesting about Tom Holland, Spider Man, kind of throughout his first trilogy, because I'm assuming there's going to be another trilogy, maybe. But him having other characters kind of be in there. And it's interesting you brought that up because this movie obviously has, cameos or just people within it that are, within the broader side of the MCU, like you mentioned, but it doesn't feel as though Tom Holland is relying on them as much. They are people that are integral to the plot, but it's not, he's really driving the plot forward himself. He's not really so reliant on these people. It's more like him living in a grand universe type of thing, which I really appreciated and we'll get more into. But yeah, so we're going to be reviewing that as usual, and then you want to talk about the pitch for the little activity we have afterwards.
Yeah, so I won't give too much away now, but in light of this movie and kind of seeing who all was in it, because there are a lot of characters in it, and kind of thinking to the past, like, this is our third live action Spider-Man. We've gone through several iterations of the Hulk. We've gone through several of the Punisher. Just seeing kind of different, perspectives of and takes on these characters. And so I thought it would be fun to kind of break down what we think are the 10 worst comic book movie castings between Marvel and DC. So I'm interested to hear kind of like where your takes are, because I put my list together very quickly, and I'm sure we'll have some overlap. But should be a good opportunity to kind of go back and forth and see what we think, and as characters have evolved as we've gone through different franchises or reboots, different continuations. Should be interesting to see kind of like where the chips fall.
Yeah, I actually struggled with my list because I'm not, when it comes to casting, I don't care as much as long as like it's done well enough. Because as we know in comic book movies, there are some castings that are a little bit like, like for instance, Will Smith as Deadshot. He's not on my list. I don't know if he's going to be on yours. I don't want to like, bury the lead, but he's not typical to what the comics have for Floyd Lawton, but he's not a character that it really matters that much. So you can kind of just put anybody within that. So, there are characters that kind of are just kind of, I don't know, a little bit different than the comics, but, still ended up serving the purpose of the movie, so we'll get into it. I ended up actually having 5 Marvel and 5 DC, which I didn't plan. It just kind of happened. But let's jump into the review for this movie. As I said, I think we both agree that this movie was very good. I personally like, I've been engaging with a lot of different people because I think I think it's fair to say that Spider-Man is the most popular superhero, like pop culture wise. A lot of people's favorite superhero of all time. The jury's still out. People argue who their favorite superhero is or who the best is, but I think just based on how we see the box office going, clearly Spider-Man like touches a lot of people. And yeah, I've been talking to a lot of people about this movie, and yeah, they're very high on this movie, and I mean I really enjoyed it. I've seen it twice now, but yeah, people to me, I think like some people online are like acting like this is the best thing since sliced bread. I'm not quite there with the movie yet because Spider-Man is not like my guy, but I can appreciate what this I can acknowledge what this movie is doing for Spider-Man fans, and it's kind of similar to probably how people thought I was like a madman for seeing the Batman in theaters 3 times because of that movie, like he's my guy.
Hey, that
So
movie's peak.
yeah, to us, but I'm sure like some Spider-Man fans might disagree. And it's just like, it's just a difference in taste and who your favorite character is. So I'm not sure if you talk to some people, but like they've been like I've known some people that are like, oh my God, this movie is like, the best, like 5 stars, like, oh my God, it's like the best thing ever. But like, it's very good, but I'm not up there like that. I just want to preface it before I get into my thoughts on the movie at large.
Yeah, I mean, very, very fair. Because like Spider-Man's definitely my favorite Marvel superhero, and I think that's the same for many people. But for a long time, like he was also just kind of it. Like
Hmm.
before anybody in the Avengers were really big, or like you had Wolverine, but like you didn't really have the X-Men. Like they weren't anywhere near big. So yeah, I mean, I think Spider-Man is many people's favorite Marvel, and definitely the most popular.
Yeah, as I've had debates with people over, because now after seeing this movie, people are saying, oh, it's put to bed that Tom Holland is the best Spider Man. I still am not in that thought process because I've come to the realization that Spider Man as a character is not somebody that I'm like in love with, but something about the Raimi trilogy really like connected with me, I guess, when I was young. So I guess that's why I kind of just have more of an affinity for him. But yeah, we can get started because I'll just say that I think Tom Holland did really well in this movie. Actually, I'm not sure how you thought about his acting or his performance within the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is his fourth Spider-Man movie, and then he's been in Avengers. We first saw him in Civil War, and like throughout all of his performances, he's continued to grow as Peter Parker. And like in this one, he really gets to play a more mature, lonely, and really just emotionally bruised version of Peter. But he still has the charm and comedic timing. And the performance really carries more weight now, seeing what he's gone through in his prior films. Um, I do think that this movie really felt like Peter finally becoming the independent Spider-Man that the previous trilogy was building toward. And it took time, it took 3 movies and popping up in other MCU movies to really kind of establish that. But I think the payoff we got was well worth.
Yeah, I think that within that you put, like hit the nail right on the head. I think like this must be off the top of my head, like maybe his sixth appearance, like overall, like just being Spider Man. I think, because well, no, maybe more than that, maybe eighth, because he was in Civil War, he's in Endgame and Infinity War, so it's actually seventh then, maybe unless I'm forgetting something.
I think 8. I think this is his 8 because he was in Civil War, Homecoming, Infinity War, Endgame, Far From Home, No Way Home,
And then Brand New Day,
Brand
so
New Day.
it'd be
Okay, 7. I can't count.
seven. Okay. So yeah, either way, like, clearly like far away the most that we've seen of any actor be a live action Spider-Man. But like you said, he takes the opportunity with each role in every movie as we keep on growing with him as a character to kind of add more and more layers to this character. And yeah, easily my issue with the, as we want to call it, the home trilogy, was he was getting a little bit too much help. I think that like Spider-Man is meant to be relatable, and this is the most relatable his character within the MCU has been. Um, I think that yeah, the previous three movies he kind of had like a lot of stuff going on. You know, you had you Doctor Strange this trying to break the multiverse to like suit him because he wasn't getting into college with his friends, and you know had Tony Stark this and all that. So this movie, you know, he has his tech, he has his own stuff going on, but it's all him. You know, there's no external thing that's coming along and helping him. Yeah, he has friendships with some of the other heroes as we'll get into, but you know that's fine. That's just a part of the universe. But yeah, he's definitely the most relatable. He's very sullen. He's very to himself and dealing with a lot of trying to bury the Peter Parker side because since everybody else has basically forgotten he's Peter Parker, he's thinking, why bother ever being Peter Parker? I'm just going to be Spider Man 24/7, basically. So I think that that's a very interesting way the movie went with it because I feel like with, especially with the Tobey Maguire trilogy, it was more of him dealing with balancing the two. Like he had his stuff with MJ, he had a job, had like everything going on with Aunt May. He had like all these other responsibilities as Peter Parker, so he didn't have the ability to say, "Oh, I'm going to just be Spider-Man full time." So this movie took it to a different extreme of kind of like flipping it on its head and saying, "Well, since everybody's forgotten me, might as well just kind of throw myself into my work." And then we, throughout the course of the film, see why that's not a healthy way to do things, and he gets on his path to finding the balance. Um, I'm personally gonna discuss like spoilers in this, and I think like it's fair to just say spoiler alert now, so we can get into the other characters. Um, so yeah, if you haven't seen the movie yet for whatever reason or have avoided big spoilers on the internet, this is your time to click away now and then come back and listen to it. So because the first thing I'm going to ask you is, what did you think of the implementation of Jean Grey in the movie?
I thought her character was a really strong addition to the MCU. Because anywhere you had looked in the marketing of this movie, it was Sadie Sink this, Sadie Sink that. Who's she playing? They're so secretive, and like I can applaud them for handling it well because her character in both the performance and the character itself, like they bring a really fresh energy to this movie, and it doesn't feel swallowed by the franchise machinery. Like Jean Grey really makes an immediate impression and honestly feels like someone who will, not could, not is, planning to, will have a meaningful future in this overall universe because the X-Men are coming and there's some big setup to go along with that. And I think most importantly, like the inclusion of Jean Grey, an X-Men character, not a Spider-Man villain, none at all. I think her inclusion really works within the movie because it doesn't feel like pure setup. Like, like we kind of talked about it, and I was kind of on the fence if she was playing Jean or not. And because I didn't see Jean Grey as a proper quote unquote villain. And she didn't really play the villain esque. Like she, was the main antagonist, but like her intent was not malicious. She meant well. Her methods were just a little, you know, unorthodox. But I really enjoyed her presence.
Yeah, I have like maybe two things wrong with this movie, or things I disliked, and it comes from the villains. And yeah, I find it interesting that you brought it up that way because I think I mean, I'm not big into the X-Men. Like I watched a good amount of the Fox movies, but I never really like cared too much for them outside of Wolverine. But from what I understand, Jean Grey is like, she's like a lot of the other mutants, very misunderstood, has like this bad past, and she doesn't kind of start getting too wonky until the Phoenix Force comes in, and I'm assuming that Sadie Sink. I just found out that Sadie Sink was meant to be playing a 16-year-old Jean Grey today,
Hmm.
and I was like, I don't buy that, but allegedly that's like she's Jean Grey in universe is meant to be 16, but Yeah, I found in this movie in the beginning when they kind of wanted to keep things, under wraps. Like they didn't want to reveal everything until the end. Like who she, like her whole thing is that she's going around. We don't even know who it is yet. And she's hopping from person to person, taunting Peter and everything, and going after something in damage control. And it's like revealed in the end. Um, but because of that, I feel like actually there were a couple of times where they actually made Jean Grey very villainous. There was like when I watched it the second time, I was like noticing the scene where like he's dealing with his whole power situation, and then the guy sees him on the side of the street, and it's actually her, and they're like talking or whatever. Through all of that, she's just like hopping around in people just to like show off to Peter, like I can be anywhere, and then she just like makes an old man back up into the street and get hit, and
Yeah.
I'm like. I don't really agree with some of those types of things she was doing, where it's like I can get her being mad at damage control and then being mad at Spider-Man for kind of seemingly working with these people that, did something terrible to her and her sister. But she's very cavalier with just everybody in general, which I didn't really buy, especially towards the end. She kind of like has this whole speech with Peter, a monologue talking about like, oh, people are like terrible. They're going to do terrible things to you and me because we're different. And the film doesn't do a great job of explaining in her backstory why she would think that all people are terrible, because it just kind of shows damage control being, terrible and seeing them as objects. And then her mom kind of abandoning her. But why is that fair for you to, put other people in danger? I just personally didn't like that they did that. They could have tweaked it a little bit to make her not so terrible to everyone. But I understand what they're trying to do in the future. And I think that what she did in this movie is going to lay the groundwork for people in general to maybe be more afraid of mutants after Secret Wars, perhaps. But yeah, that was my gripe with her character. But other than that, I think Sadie Sink played her really well, and her implementation in here unfortunately was spoiled online. And then I forget the guy's name who was on like a red carpet and actually ended up just straight up saying, "Oh
Oh,
yeah, she's my favorite
Steve
character."
Steve Lacy, the artist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he just straight up says, "Oh yeah, she's my favorite character in the movie." And I watched the clip because I obviously avoided it beforehand, but I watched the clip like yesterday, and you can see the interviewer kind of going, "Oh, is that a spoiler?" And he's just like, "Oh, like that's my favorite character." And like I don't think he knew, and I'm sure Kevin Feige probably is going to have him taken outside the back of the shed, and we won't be hearing from him again. But
No more
yeah,
music from Steve Lacy.
yeah, that's the end of his time. But yeah, they did the best that they could. I mean, with how the internet is, and especially how popular the MCU is, people are, you know, always trying to, oh, let's figure out the plot of this and who's this going to be, and it's tough for them. But I think they did the best they could with her. Um, yeah, yeah. What other things worked for you in this movie? I'm sure that there was a bunch.
Yeah, I have quite a bit. Ultimately, like I kind of opened with it, and this movie is really the return to street level Spider-Man. Like this is the grounded, neighborhood focused Spider-Man movie that many people, including myself, have wanted. After the multiverse scale that we got of No Way Home, like bringing Peter back to New York, dealing with local crime and these personal consequences just felt refreshing. And the smaller scale of it honestly doesn't make the movie feel less important. It just makes Peter's problems feel more immediate. And I kind of touched on it at the beginning as well, like Destin Daniel Cretton as the director, who also directed Shang-Chi and he did Wonder Man, other Marvel projects. Like his direction of this one really brought a clear style and point of view to the Spider-Man franchise. Like this one felt very visually distinct from the previous Tom Holland movies without abandoning everything that those films established. I thought the direction really gave this franchise new energy and just made it feel like the beginning of a genuinely different Spider-Man chapter. And to coincide with that, the consequences of No Way Home still matter. Like the ending of No Way Home is not brushed aside or quickly reversed. Like Peter's isolation and the loss of his relationships, like they continue to shape who he is. And that gave the movie an emotional foundation for the audience to grasp onto. and really just makes the title Brand New Day feel earned rather than just simply marketable. Um, the emotional moments throughout the movie are really allowed to breathe, unlike in other MCU entries. And I think one of the best improvements is that this movie does not undercut every sincere scene with a joke. Like when Peter is hurting, the film lets him hurt. And the restraint just makes the emotional beats that you see more powerful because you, as the audience, are given time to sit with them. And coinciding with the jokes and the humor is better timed. Like the movie is still funny, it still feels like Spider Man, but the jokes actually arrive at the right moments. And I thought the humor really supported Peter's personality instead of becoming this defense mechanism for the entire screenplay. But that really creates, I think, a stronger balance between the fun classic superhero material that you'll see versus the heavier Peter Parker story. And the Punisher, like we haven't even really talked about him. Like the Punisher really fit this story. Like, I think Frank Castle's role could have easily felt like another MCU cameo added just for audience reactions, just for funsies.
That's what I
But
thought it was gonna be, but he was in it a lot.
I thought the same thing. Like he was just gonna pop up and show how connected, Queens and the New York street style life is. But instead, he actually directly serves Peter's character arc and kind of challenges his ideas about justice, violence, and responsibility. And I think the contrast between Spider-Man and Punisher really gave the movie a natural moral conflict. And with that, Tom Holland and John Bernthal, like they really have good chemistry. And
Mhm.
we saw them in another movie called The Odyssey, where we see them go back and forth, not for the entirety of the movie, but a small segment. And I thought they played extremely well off one another in that scene. They one upped it in this one. Like Peter's youthful morality kind of clashes honestly perfectly with Frank's harsher view of the world. But their dynamic is really just entertaining, tense, and valuable to the actual story rather than just being empty crossover material that of the obligatory cameo. Um, and with that, like the large ensemble, because not only Punisher, not only Jean Grey, but you've also got the Hulk in it. Like that large ensemble, I think, is handled better than I even expected. I think many people expected. And I had concerns going in that the movie had too many characters. For the most part, those additions do not overwhelm Peter's story. The supporting characters that they bring in truly do feel connected to the central conflict rather than existing just to advertise future projects. I guess last couple points that I really liked, like this movie honestly looks like a comic book brought to life. I think the visual style of this one may be the best of the live action Spider-Man movies because the colors, the framing, the movement of Spider-Man and everybody else, the costumes, the street level environments that you see from, Spider-Man swinging around and going between damage control facilities or he's just in the middle of the road. Like those environments kind of give it the feeling of comic panels just in motion. Like it's stylish without losing this tactile New York atmosphere that Spider-Man really needs. And I guess last main point is I think this movie ultimately moves the franchise forward without rejecting the past because you have a new director, you have a new tone, visual style, supporting cast. You implement all that while still respecting Peter's previous journey. And it felt like a true evolution rather than, a delayed continuation or a reboot or anything. And like that balance is difficult. And I thought this movie largely pulled it off.
I think the word that you used to describe in the beginning, like distinct, it really is that because I feel like Destin Daniel Cretton, he you mentioned he did Shang-Chi and he had parts to play in Wonder Man. Um, none of like this movie doesn't look like any of those other two projects. Like even though it's the same guy kind of, pulling the strings and having a vision, I feel like they are distinct. Um Peter's suit, practical. It's not mocap, which is great. It looked really good. Like you said, bright, vibrant. All of the movements they pulled from the Insomniac video games to get some of the fight scenes and stuff like that, which I know myself and a lot of fans really enjoyed. Like the fight scenes were very dynamic, especially the one towards the end with the Hulk. I really enjoyed. Um, I wanted to touch on the characters, like you said. I thought that like not just the Punisher, not just the Hulk. I'll also spoil that Yelena's in this movie, and she's not in it a ton. But I thought that it was so interesting the three of them being in there served the purpose for Peter's journey. You had the Punisher being along with him, kind of almost buddy cop style. It wasn't quite to that extent, but he's showing Peter like this is kind of what happens when you are just completely only doing superhero stuff. You see him just kind of living off in his boat. He's isolated from everybody. He's, John Bernthal. As soon as you see him on screen, he's just, "Ugh,
Hey, let me
ugh."
tell you something.
Yeah. Oh, the mouth on this kid. That's just him. And then Peter's like, sees that path. Then, he goes and he talks to Bruce Banner in, um, one of the scenes that I really enjoyed, just him. I love how Mark Ruffalo plays Bruce Banner. Even though he's not in it a ton, just him visiting Bruce in the college that he's at, and he's teaching like physics to these people. Um, just the sheer fact that he sees that like Peter is so intelligent, like you could see it on his face, like he's like kind of like intrigued. He's like, oh my gosh, like, and then what are you gonna do about this? And what do you like? So I enjoyed their like back and forth at the college, but the Hulk kind of shows because Peter's whole like one of the hiccups within his life is now because of things that he's dealing with are kind of suppressing his feelings. His arachnid side is kind of beginning to take over a little bit more. So the implementation of the Hulk in the story is kind of showing how Bruce over X amount of years has been trying to suppress the Hulk, this side of him. It's the same thing Peter's trying to do. So again, the movie is very clever with its writing and not just saying, "Oh, we're going to just chuck in these random Marvel heroes that happen to be in it that are just not going to serve the plot other than like a cheap, oh, they're in it."
Yeah.
They're actually kind of serving what the hero is going throughout the movie, and I appreciated that. And even to Yelena being in it, yeah, I mean, I had my issues with her the whole time. She's an Avenger and she's just like chilling in a spa the whole time. But I guess that's meant to be a joke. It's just making the Avengers come off like more frauds, in my opinion. But I guess we'll deal with that in Doomsday. Her purpose is that if everybody recalls or has everybody seen in Thunderbolts, she's dealing with a lot of stuff of her own and like is throwing herself into her work and is trying to figure out her purpose and her depression. And it's very brief, her scene with Peter, but she's kind of pushing him to be like, it's not good to be alone. Like, you need to go and have friends. You need to have a life outside of this. So even her quick little cameo was chosen. It wasn't like they just threw in Red Guardian in there or they threw in Bob. They pick and choose the cameos really well. I thought, compared to like, another movie we just reviewed not too long ago, Supergirl, where Lobo was in it and it's like fun and everything, but he's not really like doing
It's like,
anything to
why?
put. Yeah, he's just in it to just be like, oh yeah, it's a big universe, Lobo's in it, and it was like it didn't distract from anything, but it's like, we need it's audiences appreciate when these cameos are there with intent and not just like, you know there for no reason. So I really appreciated the cameos. I wanted to shout out, since we already touched on Jean Grey already, the scene at the end with, the whole time she's not able to jump into Peter's mind because of his powers, his spider sense, whatever. And at the end, they have this heart to heart where it gets shown in the beginning, like he's having like a flashback to talking to Aunt May. And in the end, he ends up letting her in when she's like completely like blown up. She finds out like all this stuff about her sister and whatnot. And that scene to me was the best scene, I think, in the movie emotionally. And I think it was just Marissa Tomei, Tom Hall, and Sadie Sink, and I think that all three of them worked it really well. And I think just the narrative of what Aunt May was to Peter. Obviously, Jean Grey did not have that. As I said earlier, her mom had abandoned her and her sister, and the way the scene goes is just showing how that's exactly what Jean Grey needed to hear at that time. And then it just goes to show like how much heart Peter has and is able to forgive her and kind of be there for her after all the terrible things that she kind of did. Cause she did one particular fucked up thing in this movie to him in particular that I won't get too into.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I wanted to shout out that. I thought that the soundtrack was good. They had a couple good needle drops. Again, Supergirl could take a hint from that. The score was good overall. I loved in the beginning. It did not feel heavy handed or like too much exposition with them just showing the course of the 4 years that Ned and MJ are in college. It just shows him kind of just keeping up with them like via Instagram story basically. And throughout that, they do these really cool shots that are like paying homages to Spider-Man covers in the comics, where it's like him fighting the Scorpion and jumping up, or the one with Tombstone holding him. Like, it's just like little winks to the audience, the people that like read those comics. So I really liked how those looked as well. Um, yeah, those are the. I mean, you kind of touched on majority of everything else, and I mean, like we discussed it kind of before that. But those are basically the things I enjoyed, which was, a lot of things. And then the Jean Grey thing was one thing that I kind of didn't, I had my small issue with, as I said, with her being evil. And then as we transition into the stuff that I guess didn't work for us, the only other thing that like I didn't enjoy, then it wasn't for the movie, it was the studio in general. They gave away way too much in the trailer for me. I think that if they kind of held back on just showing maybe Bruce in the trailer, but not, revealing he's going to be the Hulk, or, less of Frank Castle, less of these other, like the hand, didn't, I mean, I feel like basically every big fight in the movie
You
we saw
saw.
in the
Yeah.
trailer. Yeah, I don't know how you felt about that, but that was like something that, like, when I watched it the first time, I was kind of like, that's a shame. Like I kind of already saw this. I can kind of connect the dots where this was going. And, you know, yeah, I thought that if they kind of held back a little bit more, it would have enhanced the movie going experience for me personally. I don't know if other people felt that way, but those are the only points that I had for quote unquote negatives, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I only have a couple as well. I think the main thing for me is that, I applauded the visuals in this one. In some ways, there are a couple moments where the visual effects are not perfect. Like the overall visual presentation is excellent, but there were a couple individual effects that I saw that didn't reach that same standard. There are a handful of like certain moments that you can tell are digital, and they stand out more because the rest of the movie really looks so tactile and carefully designed. It's not enough to damage the experience, but the inconsistency was noticeable for me. Um, I think depending on how you feel about ensembles in comic book movies, like you might think that there's some crowding risk with this one. And while I do think the movie handles its characters better than I even expected, there is still a lot happening between Peter, Punisher, Jean Grey, all other these returning figures that you'll see pop up, and just the larger MCU connections. They all compete for screen time. I do think a slightly leaner movie may have allowed certain relationships or conflicts to develop even further. And with that, the grounded identity of this movie can occasionally be tested depending on your view of it. Overall, I think the movie does succeed as a street level Spider-Man story, but I would love to just see one without the presence of several major MCU characters, because I think that naturally threatens that focus. And while this one mostly maintains the balance, there are moments where the larger universe starts pressing against the smaller Peter Parker story. So I would really like for future installments to really resist allowing the crossover elements to kind of become the main attraction and rope more people in. And I do think a few ideas throughout the film could have used a bit more room, but because the film has so many strong characters and concepts, not everything can receive equal attention. But there were just a handful of story elements that kind of left me wanting more, not because they failed, but because the movie really just established material it couldn't explore completely within this movie alone. Um, but overall, really, really enjoyed it. Like those are just kind of minor nitpicks.
Yeah. Yeah, you brought up something interesting because I had this thought as well, and it's not a negative or anything because it didn't bother me. But honestly, with everybody saying, "Oh, finally we're getting this Tom Holland movie that's more grounded and more. I didn't think it was all that grounded. Like, what with Jean Grey doing all this stuff, you have damage control running around, Peter doing all these things, all these villains. I didn't think it was the most grounded thing in the world. In fact, I think that Homecoming is more grounded than this, in my opinion. Like, I thought it was a lot more of a simple thing. Like, he's in high school, whatever. As I said, like, I didn't mind anything that they chose to do within Brand New Day, but people acting like it's, I don't know, like a walk in the park. Like Peter's not really dealing with any. Yeah, he's not dealing with multiverse stuff, but like there's a whole ass like fucking X-Man in here that's like doing all this stuff, and like it's not. He's not like just catching bank robbers, basically.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
no, fair point.
but yeah, still very good. What did you give Spider-Man Brand New Day?
I gave it an 8.9 out of 10.
Okay. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Around the same. I'd probably give it like, if I had to translate it, maybe like an 8 out of 10. So
Yeah, my scale, anything that is like it is 4 stars. 4.5 stars for me is a 9. So just short of that, but very good nonetheless.
yeah, yeah, very good. Definitely, if you're, I mean, majority of the world has already seen it. If not, they are already planning on seeing it. But if you need two guys to tell you, hey, it's worth your time and money, then we will gladly tell you, yeah, I definitely recommend it.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else you wanted to touch on before we go into our little list activity here?
No, I'm all good.
Okay, cool. You want to walk us through anything else about this list before we start naming our guys and gals?
So yeah, the way that I interpreted this as, the 10 worst Marvel slash DC castings ever.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than defining worst casting as, just an absolute miscast, like I treated it as like the biggest gap between the actor's interpretation and the essential appeal of the character, not just the worst acting. Like that is a card. Um, I think a lot of my choices in here may come off as intentionally controversial.
Oh
Um,
no.
but we'll see. I'm sure we have some over. You said you had an even amount between Marvel and DC.
Yeah, I just counted right before, just out of curiosity, and yeah, it's 5 and 5 for me.
So I have 4 Marvel and 6 DC.
Okay, I don't think mine are generally, because I'm sure the ones that you have I'd thought about, but a lot of these people, I respect what the film was trying to do, or the initial like vision, I feel like, for why they casted them. And I think it's either bad direction, a bad script that like let the character down. So I can't really chalk that up to the casting. So I just went with 10 people that I kind of just didn't really agree with the casting, or I thought like there maybe somebody else could have done it better, type of thing. Because as I said, I'm not really big on the casting as long as it's done well. But some of the people that, like, the typical people that you'd think of, like, oh, they're like so shit in this role, I'm like, they're like good actors. So I feel like if they had better material, then it could have been different. But so let's see what we got going on. I will gladly discuss these so-called controversial picks that you have. Let's see.
Okay, so I can go ahead and get rolling. Going from 10, starting working our way up to the worst.
Mhm.
So at number 10, I have Mr. Dane DeHaan as Harry Osborn from The
Okay.
Amazing Spider-Man 2. Uh, I think his role convincingly captured Harry Osborn's resentment and instability. But the minute you see him, he just feels sinister right from the very first scene. Like it ultimately just took the tragedy of watching Peter Parker's trusted friend, gradually become an enemy, just gone. Uh, he has this pale, twitchy intensity that really just made the transformation into the Green Goblin just feel predetermined rather than this devastating fall. And I never thought that he established enough charm, vulnerability, or ultimately believable history with Peter. I think coinciding with it, like the script was rushed and I think that does deserve some blame. But I think ultimately he looks and acts like the Green Goblin before his story even really gets the chance to get rolling.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but yeah, you see, like something like that, I'm like, I don't know how much of that was his fault or like the castings. Like I'm wondering if if anybody else would have been casted in that role, if it would have been different. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like because that could have very easily been he was playing it a different way, and the director just said like, no, I need you to show these hints of being sinister from the. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's where I like struggled with this list. I'm like, what is the separation between the actual casting, the actor choices, the script? Like, it's tough. Like, there's certain ones that I'm sure as we get higher up on the list. But I see where you're coming from. Like, I mean, that's his role, and I mean, the Amazing Spider-Man 2 as a whole movie is kind of dismissed as being like one of the lower
I think that
Marvel
is
movies.
the worst Spider-Man movie.
Yeah, both the Amazing Spider-Man movies. I've watched once, and I have no intention on ever like going back to watch them. So I honestly don't remember them a ton. But yes, I do recall him in the movie and wasn't terribly impressed. My number 10 is Jason Momoa's Aquaman, which might be controversial just because I don't know, this is like the live action Aquaman that everybody's accustomed to, but I remember when the Justice League kind of got announced and they kind of showed them in Batman versus Superman, I was like kind of confused. So for me, I put him at 10, not because Jason Momoa did anything wrong with the role. He like serves the purpose of the Aquaman that I guess Zack Snyder wanted in his movie, but it's so far removed from the comics. Like they basically just casted Maui from Moana as like this Aquaman, which I guess like they're trying to say like, surfer guy, Samoan, like I guess, but like that's just not the Arthur Curry that I grew up watching. So I just thought it was like such a weird veer in a weird direction that I was like, it didn't really work for me. And then, I mean, as time has shown, like, didn't really work for anyone. Like that universe is dead now, and he's Lobo baby. So yeah, that's my number 10.
Hey, what can I say except you're welcome?
There you go. All right, what's your number 9?
So my number 9, I'm actually giving you a throwback. Mr. Chris O'Donnell as Robin from the '90s Batman movies.
Uh, I guess
You guess?
From Batman and Robin.
Yeah. Like
Uh,
I think he,
Everybody in that movie is not, you know,
but hear my argument first.
fair enough.
I think ultimately, like this casting, like especially as Dick Grayson, like it's just him being played more like this fully grown action hero
Mm,
rather than Batman's young, emotionally volatile protege. And it really weakened the surrogate, father and son relationship that's truly at the heart of Robin.
right.
And in those movies, like he has the clean cut appearance and the athletic build. I just think his performance really just lacks Dick's like playful confidence, this youthful energy that we typically see, and ultimately just natural charisma. Like he kind of just felt more like Bruce Wayne's like irritated adult roommate rather than a future Nightwing. But with that, like to the movie's disadvantage, like the scripts are very campy, and those did him no favors. But I don't know. I just never got definitive Robin casting from him.
No, I hear what you're saying. I'm not sure if other people in the movie are going to be on your list. I don't have anybody from that movie on the list just because it's like it would be like putting people from like the 66 Batman. You know what I mean? Like Adam West is not like a ripped guy. Like he's not like, you know what I mean? Like, so that movie to me, I'm like, it was clear that they were kind of just trying to sell toys. And yeah, that's why.
I have one other character from that sequence of movies on this
Gotcha.
list.
Okay. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Out of all the people there, yeah, it's like Robin is meant to be a little bit more childlike, basically. And yeah, he doesn't play it that way. But I don't know why they casted such an older guy, but my number 9 is Sean Gunn as Maxwell Lord. We've only seen him twice in the DCU. My is going to be very short. I just think that this casting is literally just James Gunn just giving his brother like a role in the DCU. I think that Maxwell Lord is not probably going to play a great role. Like he's going to have his little cameos, with his ties in with the Justice Gang going forward. I just think that it was like a nepotism type situation, and somebody else could have gotten it, but like Sean Gunn. So yeah, that's why I put it at 9. I was like, I don't love it, but it's not the worst thing in the world. Probably not going to be that big of a deal. So yeah, that's my 9.
I agree with you, but not bad enough to be on my list.
Fair enough.
So number 8, I actually just had to Google his name to make sure I didn't butcher it. Johan Griffith as Reed Richards.
Oh, I big disagree.
I figured you would
I like
because
him way better than Pedro Pascal.
I I think the jury's still out on Pedro. Like I don't know yet. He is like in this role, like he's likable and believable as this pleasant scientist, but ultimately, like I just thought his Reed Richards just lacks the intellectual authority, obsession, and quiet arrogance that should ultimately define the smartest person in the room. Um, he's in his movies, especially, like he's routinely overshadowed, I think, by Chris Evans and Michael Chiklis. And I ultimately think it leaves that Fantastic Four without a convincing visionary leader. Like I think part of it was the screenplay. Like it kind of reduced Reed to this romantic indecision and exposition, but Griffith still plays him more like an apologetic college professor than a mind capable of intimidating gods. Like it's just, eh.
Yeah, I can understand that. Again, I think that like has to do with, like you said, like how they structured the movie. Um, but yeah, I'm a big Fantastic Four apologist, like the old school one. Like I don't think it's as bad as people let on, but Pedro Pascal probably has a long road ahead of him going into the next phase of the MCU after Secret Wars and whatnot. So we'll see more. Time will tell. We've only seen him do one movie, um, and he's going to be coming back in Doomsday later this year. So we'll see. I think that the Pedro Pascal casting, I didn't put it on my list. I think that was just a casting based on notoriety. It's just I'm like Marvel just wanted a big name to be Reed Richards and just went with him because eventually he was going to probably find his way into the MCU at some point. So why not? But yeah, I understand what you mean. Like out of the 4, he's kind of the 4th most important, and that's not how Reed Richards is supposed to be. So I get you. My number 8 is Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. I think that my initial thought is that they casted her based on how she looks, because I think her look and the costume and everything is very Wonder Woman. Like her height's good, like the way she interacts, like looking in that Trinity shot with Henry Cavill and Ben Affleck in BVS. It like they all look good. But I just think, again, like it's not really fair to. I mean, we all know that Gal Gadot's not the best
Kal-El,
actor.
no.
Yeah, we know that she's not the best actor in the world. But a lot of my issues with her, or even with Henry Cavill's stuff, like it's nothing to do with the actors really. It's like tough because of the scripts they're given, and I think that if there was better ideas there, it could have been something more. But yeah, out of the big 3, I think she's the weakest, like acting wise. In fact, in the whole Justice League movie, I think, well, other than another person who's on my list, I think that she's pretty weak. In the Snyder cut, she kind of gets more of a, coming in as more of that hope while Superman is still not around, which I enjoyed the writing of. But overall, just throughout the universe, I was like, they could have gone with somebody else and it would have been just as fine, if not better. So I wanted to put her in this as well.
Yeah, I agree with your points, and with that, she is also on my list. She like possesses this physical credibility, charisma, and as you said, like the iconic visual presence that is required for Wonder Woman. But ultimately, she's less convincing when Diana has to come out and display this philosophical authority, just these layered emotions. her intelligence or just complexity. Like I think the first Wonder Woman movie succeeded because Patty Jenkins, the director, really did a good job emphasizing Gal Gadot's like sincerity, idealism, the physicality, the chemistry with Chris Pine, like all of those things. But in later appearances, like they kind of expose the limitations of a performance that captured the image more completely than the personality. She looks entirely believable as Wonder Woman, but just does not sound or feel like the complete character. Um,
Yep.
I had her at number 5.
Okay. All right. What do you got for 7?
So 7, uh, I don't know. I can't tell if you're going to agree with me on this one or not. Uh, Topher Grace as Venom.
I have him at 6.
Okay, okay. Um, I think he was an intriguing choice as this selfish, dark mirror of Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker, but he never developed this menace, physicality, or obsessive hatred really just to become Venom, unless you count him in the church and he's like, please kill Peter Parker. But his Eddie Brock just feels like this annoying coworker rather than this legitimate threat, and his sarcastic, lightly comedic energy just remains even after the symbiote is supposed to transform him into Spider-Man's nightmare. Like the character was rushed into the film, and like Sam Raimi is even on record for not really wanting Venom in this movie.
Yeah.
But Venom just can't feel like Peter's irritating younger colleague wearing a monster costume, and that's what we got in Spider-Man 3.
Yeah. He's basically just Eric Foreman from that 70s show. And I love Spider-Man 3. I know a lot of people dislike it a lot. It has my favorite Marvel character of all time, Bully Maguire, is in it. Not even just Spider-Man, just Bully Maguire is just the best Marvel character ever, in my opinion. But yeah, I agree with everything you said. When you look at Eddie Brock from the comics and Venom from the comics or any other media, really, he's like this big, not just Venom, but Eddie Brock is like this big imposing guy, and he's meant to like kind of just shuffle into the Daily Bugle, or like kind of just throwing his weight around with Peter. And yeah, he doesn't really do that in this movie, as you said. Yeah, too sarcastic, too quippy with his jokes. Like it wasn't the right choice. As you said, like it's an interesting choice, but not necessarily the right one for Eddie Brock. So yeah, that was my number 6.
I mean, if you want forgiveness, get religion.
The movie's so good. I like quote it to my friends all the time. It's like one of the most quotable movies. It's so good. So for 7, maybe you'll have him on your list. For me, I have Oscar Isaac as Apocalypse from X-Men. I as I stated earlier, I'm not the biggest X-Men guy, but I try, and I'm not the biggest Marvel guy in general. So whenever there's a movie that comes out or anything, I try and do like, watch a video here and there to, brush up on these people, like what are their power sets, what's their origin, whatever. And from what I understand, Oscar Isaac's like, it's like, again, I don't know how much of this is the casting or how much of it like that X-Men Apocalypse just wasn't done correctly, but from what I understand, that his portrayal of Apocalypse is just not the most, Apocalypse is meant to be this like world and like their Thanos type of thing, and it just didn't come off like that to me in the movie, and that movie to me is kind of almost forgettable, and I just didn't really enjoy it in general. And so just him carrying the weight of being that villain, and then he's meant to be this villain that's like this big bad, and he's not really feeling like that too much, and just the way he delivers lines, and he's like the scene in the beginning where he touches the TV and he's like learning, and like it didn't work for me. So yeah, that's why I have him on the list. So that covered my number 7 and my number 6 spot with what you said for Topher. So I'll revisit when we get back to 5.
So my number 6 is Ezra Miller as Barry Allen.
He's my number 1.
Really?
I
Okay.
hate I hate him as the Flash.
I do
or
too.
Them, I should say.
But I have several people higher. I think Ezra Miller, like he brings they bring energy, humor, and emotional intensity to the Flash. But we get this hyperactive, socially chaotic interpretation that rarely resembles the earnest, grounded, scientifically minded Barry Allen. Like the nonstop nervous comedy just made the character feel closer to Bart Allen Impulse, and ultimately just turns this foundational Justice League hero into the team's excitable mascot. Like I do think Miller at times like delivers some effective dramatic moments, especially in the Flash. Like for all the flaws that movie has, there are a handful of things that are positive, but this like just remains a capable performance just built around the wrong interpretation of the character, and it's just not good.
Yeah, I'm sure that they are a fine actor. Um, but whatever direction that Zack Snyder, whatever the case is, it just makes it seem as though Ezra Miller cannot play the Flash. Like, is as like I can't believe such a popular comic book character was just done in such a weird, like the shit that he was saying in the Justice League, especially the Justice League version. Like they try and make him like be this funny guy, like he's the funny member of like the Justice League, which in some comic iterations, you have the interaction between him and Hal Jordan. They're more of like the light-hearted, like they don't take things as seriously as the rest of the league, which is fine. But like like it's just so rubbish. Like Ezra Miller is just like it's like what like you feel like you're losing brain cells. Like the things he says, the stuff that like or that they say, and just I don't know again if that's the script or the direction told him to just you know act like that. But yeah, it just
Hey, it's
that choice.
okay. I'm running.
Oh, the running is crap. It's just all bad. Yeah, I don't get it. So that's why it's my number one. It's the one that out of all of these I feel the strongest about. Like I disliked everything that they were in. Um, as I said, like as an actor, um, even in the Fantastic Beast series, like they're fine, and Perks of Being a Wallflower, they're good, and that's all I've really seen them in, other than the Flash stuff. So just seeing them as this role multiple times, and then every film just gets them wrong every time. It just wears on you, especially with like a character that I mean, he's not like Batman level of care, but I care about the Flash like a lot, like more than I even do Superman. And I think that like I pray that they haven't announced anything, but I pray that James Gunn does a better Flash or figures some shit out that's better than this because that's ridiculous.
I agree.
So yeah,
So yeah, number 5, I had Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. Who is your number 5?
I'm going to be butchering her name, Olga Kurylenko, who is the Taskmaster in the
Uh,
MCU. Again, we don't get a ton of her. She doesn't like have any lines or anything like that. But what's disappointing is I think she has like a couple, maybe a handful of lines. Like she doesn't talk much in Black Widow or in the 2 seconds she's in Thunderbolts before she's taken to the Shadow Realm. But yeah, for again, like this is a situation just like Apocalypse. Like I wasn't too familiar with Taskmaster. I know as much as he's just somebody who can just mimic moves and doing brushing up on the research for when Black Widow is coming out so I can find out more about the character. People were like saying like he has like all this personality and he's actually kind of like funny at times and all these things. And then Black Widow, like the way that
just
they
ruined
just
all
did
that.
this character. Yeah, like it's just completely different. Um, I guess they just wanted to tie in. I mean, I don't care about gender switches if it serves the narrative well and it's done right. But for this, it was kind of just like switched just because of the whole narrative of Black Widow with Dracov's daughter. And it just, all of that just didn't work. And like, she's like basically this mindless drone being controlled by this like Russian guy. And it just, as you said, it just took away from all of the things that I think all the people that enjoy Taskmaster from the comics um, really wanted to see. So yeah, that was why I have her at 4, and she got killed. Or sorry, at 5, and she got killed off unceremoniously, as I said, like just to prove that the MCU didn't give two shits.
Yeah,
So
immediately.
yeah, so that was my 5.
So at number 4, I have another oldie, Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face. Tommy Lee
Oh,
Jones
I think Jim
has
Carrey would agree.
yeah. Um he Tommy Lee Jones really had this gravitas and dramatic ability to portray an exceptional Harvey Dent, but he instead plays Two-Face as this loud, broadly comic imitation of the Joker. And by matching Jim Carrey's manic energy rather than contrasting it, he ultimately just strips away Harvey's intelligence, tragedy, morality, the psychological duality between the two faces. That movie ultimately just left two exaggerated villains just competing for the same tonal space. Like, I think while Tommy Lee Jones may have delivered exactly what Joel Schumacher, the director, requested, but the result ultimately just wasted an actor who could have created an all-time version of the character, and it was ruined as soon as they made him pink and yellow and vibrant. Like it was, uh,
Yeah, I think that this is one of the ones so far, at least, even out of the ones I have on my list, that I 100% agree that the casting there, just especially for what clearly they wanted with the character in that movie, it would be like casting like Liam Neeson in that role. Like they're just like, when I think of people that are within that movie, like as you said, like a Jim Carrey, um, Tommy Lee Jones, like when you think of his filmography, is not that kind of character worker,
yeah,
like, so it was just bizarre to, I guess, like, again, he's a was a big name and they just wanted him in there. And I mean, like, he serves the plot well enough and does, like you said, what the director wanted. But yeah, that for sure is one of the biggest doozies out of why they would want somebody so vastly different in filmography from what they were doing in that role. So I can agree with that for sure. My number four is none other than Dakota Johnson as Madam Web. Um, yeah, do you not have her on your list, or you forgot
I
about her?
actually
Kind of.
don't. I don't have her. I don't think I, that movie is like an absolute zero, but I can kind of understand where they were coming from with her as Madam Web. And I think it was
So
more the movie fault than her.
I think that, first of all, I think that Dakota Johnson is very hit or miss for me in general as like an actress. Um, in this movie, so I'm actually I watched this other podcast called well, it's the same guys that do like this wrestling podcast that I watch, and it's called Cutscene, and their whole thing is that they only watch bad movies. And they did an episode on Madam Web, and I was actually rewatching it before you even told me about this idea, and while we're watching it, like kind of through what they're talking about, you see how like disinterested she kind of is in the role. And I think that just the sheer fact that Sony was trying to make these, like, I can't even say D level, like F level, G level, H level
Z level.
Spider-Man characters a thing is really weird. But like, yeah, for them to be doing such a deep pull, I feel like they needed a lead that was going to like bring it in with so much more charisma and have so much care for it. And I think a lot of times within the movie, Dakota Johnson was very clearly, in interviews, she said that when she signed on, the script was a lot better. And then, all with the COVID and blah, 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 committee joins
Sure.
in. That's what she said. And that she allegedly thinks that it was going to be a lot better, and then the film that we ended up getting was just not kind of what was originally agreed upon. So I don't know all of the intricacies of that, but again, like, it clearly doesn't seem to me like she cared that much. The way she's delivering lines, the way just her demeanor is like, and of course I don't know much about Madam Web, but or her origin story. But in that movie, I just don't think that Dakota Johnson served it well. They needed somebody a little bit more larger than life. No shade to Dakota Johnson, but I just think like her roles are not usually that type of leading lady. Like, she's not, she doesn't like command the screen like, a Meryl Streep or something like that. So yeah, that was my weird, like, it was
Well,
a
I
weird
mean,
choice to me.
you know in the movie the main villain he was in the Amazon with her mom when she was researching spiders right before she died.
Yeah. He's rubbish too.
That
Everything
whole
he says is
movie,
ADR.
it's zero.
I'll never forget watching that movie, and myself and my girlfriend kept looking at each other and we're like, is there something wrong with our screen? Because everything he's saying is like either delayed or like whatever. And then come to find out, I was like, no, they just like for whatever reason decided to show an audience, like, just say like, oh, we're gonna release this movie, and they did not even try to edit that. They were like, oh, he just did all his ADR lines. Doesn't matter if it matches his voice, just fuck it. Like, we're putting it out there.
Yeah,
I was like, That's crazy to me. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's my number four.
So my number three, I actually have a character that we just talked about, played by a different actress, and it's none other
Oh,
than Jean Grey, played by Sophie Turner. Uh,
oh,
her
okay.
her role in the younger X-Men, I guess, trilogy with James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender, that younger group. I think Turner really effectively portrayed Jean Grey's like suffering and her instability, but we never see this warmth, empathy, composure, emotional intelligence, all things that you get with Sadie Sink, that ultimately make her transformation into the Dark Phoenix tragic. Like they just rushed into that movie and that storyline. But her restrained delivery, like often just read to me as emotional distance, like really just kind of leaving Jean disconnected from the X-Men and feeling more like a character being moved by the plot than the heart of the story. And like the weak screenplays in both Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix, like those absolutely deserve significant blame. But without a vivid, compassionate Jean Grey, like Dark Phoenix is really just destruction rather than loss and like taking it out. And yeah, she just felt cold, almost like she's back to living in the code as cold as Sansa Stark from Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I don't remember her role too much because I've probably only seen of those newer ones. I think I saw two of them, so I don't really
You're not
remember.
missing much. Yeah, like unless you've
Yeah.
seen she's not in First Class. She's not in Days of Future Past. Like it's really just Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix, and both are
So then I've only
rubbish.
seen her in one then because I saw First Class for sure, and then I saw Apocalypse. I don't think I've seen the other two, so I've only seen her in Apocalypse then.
Days of Future Past is excellent, but yeah, like Apocalypse is bad. Dark Phoenix is even worse. So, well, they're probably comparable.
Yeah. My number three is Kristen Wiig as Cheetah. One of the I know people maybe don't agree with
I
me, but
forgot
that's
all
our.
about her.
Oh yeah, well, let me tell you, that movie to me is one of my least favorite comic book movies of all time. I remember it coming around COVID and like I was so starved for, content of like that superhero comic
Yeah,
book stuff. And I don't think that Wonder Woman has been done too much justice in any like a lot of media. Like I think like out of the big that we say that like she's a part of the trinity, she's a part of the big three of DC, but a lot of times she doesn't feel like that. It feels like the Flash is more important than her. Like I feel like there's other characters that get a lot more time in the sun than she does. And the first Wonder Woman movie was pretty good. I remember having my reservations watching it and then like actually seeing it. I was like, wow, that was really good, especially compared to, Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman and everything. Um, but then this movie came out around COVID and like Cheetah is my favorite Wonder Woman villain. There's not a ton to choose from, but she is, and like I just enjoy it's just a very simple story that somehow the movie got wrong, and I just didn't understand them casting this comedian who's known from SNL to be the cheetah. Like I just didn't understand it at the time, seeing the trailer. And then the way she plays it, I wouldn't even say that she's like being funny or anything in particular, but it's just weird. It was just like a weird idea to have her be the cheetah. And then the movie's also not good. They mess up Barbara's character. They just don't like, and then they throw in the whole Pedro Pascal, Maxwell Lord wishing whatever nonsense. I just hate that movie. But focusing on Cheetah, like I just think that for her being in my opinion, the like my favorite, Wonder Woman villain, and like could have had like some very cool fight scenes, have her more in the Amazon, have her more in the forest, like dealing with all these things. They just didn't do that, and I just thought that the casting was very strange. I don't know if anybody else could have done it that much better and salvaged the movie, but I doubt it. But yeah, I thought it was a very bizarre, like it would be like, oh, let's just for the if Batman the Batman movie with Robert Pattinson a couple years ago, instead of Zoe Kravitz, we get Kate McKinnon. Let's just put Kate McKinnon in the bat suit, the Catwoman suit, and have this like comedian. It's like weird, So
yeah.
yeah, that's my three.
So my number two is Mr. Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor.
All right, yeah, you say your thing. Go ahead.
Uh, so Jesse Eisenberg, I really like as an actor, and he really gave this committed, energetic performance. But he just has this twitchy, socially erratic Lex Luthor, and to me, it felt closer to the Riddler or a modernized Joker than Superman's controlled, charismatic, intellectual rival. Like Lex should ultimately like command corporations, institutions, public trust, while presenting himself as this reasonable human alternative to an alien god. Yet Jesse Eisenberg is just suspicious and unstable almost immediately. Like they had this Silicon Valley inspired concept, and like I think it had potential. It was different, but his performance ultimately turned this cold visionary into this frantic eccentric running an excessively complicated prank. Like especially with Dooms. Don't even get me started on Doomsday. I'm like, oh,
Is that you're good?
I'm good. Yeah, that's all I can stomach.
I mean, I've argued this for years. I'm also a Batman versus Superman apologist, and I actually rather enjoy that movie. I know a lot of people just hate it and they think it's like the worst movie ever. Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor is a popular thing that people dislike. I agree with the points that you said. It was different, which I appreciated because up until that point, we've just had the same bald billionaire doing the same real estate schemes or whatever. And what I enjoyed about his portrayal is it's a stark contrast with Henry Cavill's Superman. It's this basically this nerdish, very small guy who's like kind of squirrely going around talking about like power and everything and how he doesn't have it compared to this jacked god in Superman. So I enjoyed that difference rather than them having an imposing Lex Luthor. I understand why they went with it. I think that given a better script, Jesse Eisenberg would have done, because I think he's a good actor as well. I think that it was a script issue and the script had too much stuff it was trying to set up and, all of these things, but that's for another time. Also, another point that I bring up to people is that it seems as though in that movie, to me, how I interpret it is that he has his hair, and then by the end of the movie, he gets the bald head, and then in the post credit scenes of Justice League, he seems a little bit more like the Lex Luthor from the comics, and he's you know being more his interactions with Deathstroke is more kind of like the arrogant bald billionaire that everybody came to love. So I feel as though if things didn't go so off tilt with the universe, maybe we would have seen that, but it just didn't have the time. But for the role that you're talking about, he's not on my list because I honestly think that if given better circumstances, he would have done a good job. But I understand everybody's complaints with him and I acknowledge them. But that's my 2 cents on why I don't think he's that bad.
Fair.
Nicholas Holt's better
Yes.
already.
Already. Yeah.
Um so where am I at now? Yeah, we already covered my number one. So you just did two, right?
I just did two.
Okay. Okay, so this is my last one because we kind of already touched on Ezra Miller. So number two for me might be a little bit out there because I don't think I've ever heard people talk about this casting or like disliking him. But this one, like, I put it at two because I was like, it's a little different and I really don't see where they were going with it. But it's Tony Revolori as Flash Thompson
Huh.
and Tom Holland's, whatever trilogy he had going
Yeah.
on. Flash, he's just like, I don't know, like every time he's on screen, he's always like trying to talk shit to Peter Parker. And I'm like, dude, like, fucking Tom Holland would fuck you up. Why are they like, shut the hell up? What are you talking about? So, like, Flash Thompson is meant to be this like jock, like bully that like is giving Peter Parker a hard time. And I mean, we can get into the whole issues that I had with just how Peter Parker is portrayed in those trilogies. But yeah, it just kind of like phones in the fact that his Flash Thompson is basically a nerd himself and like this like geek. And I'm like, what the hell were they trying to go with? Like, why is this geek that's smaller than Tom Holland like bullying Tom Holland? So I thought I didn't know what they were going for there. Like it was just being like that rich kid or whatever. But that just is completely obtuse to me. So that's why I have it at two because I was like, honestly, it bothers me and I don't feel like people talk about it enough.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought to put him on that list because like it didn't. I don't think it bothered me that much, especially compared to who I'm about to talk about at number one.
Fair enough.
I apologize in advance. I'm gonna double down on the DC disrespect. I have to go with the infamous Jared Leto as the Joker at number one. I have to. Like it just his Joker just felt assembled from conspicuous choices. Like, oh hey, it's the Joker. Give him tattoos, give him grills, give him growls, give him some laughs, give him some Joker costumes. But he's got these affected mannerisms, and it's like those choices are thrown in rather than inhabited as this unpredictable force of nature that the Joker should be. Like I think his performance in Suicide Squad, all of it, it constantly announces this danger, but it rarely creates any genuine uncertainty or psychological menace. I think that character felt like a criminal constructing a Joker brand instead of, oh hey, I'm Batman's greatest adversary. And the theatrical cut that we've seen, his limited screen time, those things undoubtedly hurt him. But I think what reached the screen was all design, posing, and reputation with very little character. And I think it's the weakest major live action interpretation of the Joker.
Oh yeah, easily. The only reason he's not on my list, I think he's like far worse than Jesse Eisenberg, but it's a similar reason. Um, I didn't mind him in the Snyder Cut post credit scene, like where they're in the nightmare scene. So to me, like I did like he had like a 2 minute like little monologue thing back and forth with Batman, which I rather enjoyed what he was like saying. And he wasn't like annoying like he was in the Suicide Squad movie. So to me, I was kind of like, well, if that's a Jared Leto, a version of Jared Leto's Joker that we could have gotten, I think that maybe David Ayer gave him a little bit too much freedom and he was carrying on with the, oh, I need to be method. And I think like Jared Leto is not a bad actor. And actually, I think I even mentioned to you when I saw Masters of the Universe and I think he played Skeletor really well. He could have played the Joker like he did Skeletor, like that kind of energy, and so he's capable of it. So I think like the casting itself was like, they were again trying to be different with their villains, like a la Jesse Eisenberg. But I don't know, the movie just I don't think wrote the Joker well. As you said, it was came off like too performative within the universe. Um, and then I think they just kind of let Jared Leto have a bit of his own too much creative stuff, which kind of lent into it being worse.
As
But
he
I don't
tends to do with other
Yeah,
movies.
exactly. Like I think that he's somebody that like from the movies I've seen where he's quite good. He just needs like a direction, like just steer him saying you got to go here. But the minute that you start like having him improv too much or being like, let me put this idea in and I'm going to start sending used condoms to my co-actors and whatever,
Yeah.
then that's when, yeah. But again, I understand people's issues with it. I have just an issue with not just him, but that whole movie. But yeah, that's why I didn't include him on the list because I was like, I honestly wouldn't have minded seeing how he would portray the Joker if given a better script. That's why I don't have him on the list. Like, I'd be like, that's an interesting casting to me. Like, if they actually, you know, channeled him better. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Fair.
So yeah, that's our list because we already covered Ezra Miller, which is my number one. Um, So yeah, we didn't have a ton of crossover. I think it was just Gal Gadot
Gal
and was that it?
Gadot, Ezra
And Ezra
Miller.
Miller. And that's it, right?
Yeah.
And Topher Grace
And
as
Topher
Venom.
Grace. Yeah. So
So we had 3 out of 10. So
not bad.
pretty different stuff. But I
Yeah.
think like yeah, a lot of this I struggled with mine. I wrote it like earlier today at work, and I was really like, I didn't like this person, but I was like, again, like I talked myself out of including him because like, oh well, the movie's rubbish, but like maybe they weren't. So, but all of the stuff that you brought up, I was like, I definitely see your point with all of them. So
Except for Mr. Fantastic.
I still see the criticisms that you have because he's definitely like the least important, and he
Yeah.
shouldn't feel that way. I just think like when I think of Mr. Fantastic or how I envision him from the comics, I think that he just looks like more Mr. Fantastic than Pedro Pascal. And everybody was just so, oh, Pedro Pascal, this, and like, who's going to play Reed Richards? And I was like, out of all the people that people were pitching at the time, I was like, Pedro Pascal just doesn't look like or seem like Reed Richards to me. But we'll see.
It just wasn't fantastic.
Say that again. How come you didn't mention anybody from that movie? I didn't watch it, so I couldn't even include
So
anyone.
that movie is dreadful, but I actually kind of liked the casting that they went in. Like if so,
Really?
Michael B. Jordan is actually pretty solid as Johnny Storm. Um, Miles Teller like actually was pretty good as Mr. Fantastic. If for whatever reason the MCU decides to go down the dark tunnel and decide to adapt the Maker, please cast Miles Teller as the Maker. The Maker is basically this evil multiverse version of Mr. Fantastic, but like he loses his family and just goes like criminal, but like he's like psychotic, which is kind of a different twist to see. Yeah, like that movie is definitely worse than both the 2000s Fantastic Four movies. But I think the idea of casting those, actors and actresses, I get the vision.
Yeah. I've heard people say they didn't like Kate Mara, but again, I
Yeah,
have no opinion.
if there was one weak link, like it was probably her.
Yeah.
Give me
Well,
Jessica Alba over Kate Mara.
give me Jessica Alba over Vanessa Kirby. But, that's
Hey, that too.
that's another episode's worth of stuff. So, yeah, you have anything else you wanted to add for Spider-Man or for these odd castings, worst castings lists?
No, I'm all good. Hopefully, y'all enjoyed hearing us debate and do something a little different.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, then we will catch you all in the next episode. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, everybody.